What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Full 40 with Chris, Trevor, and Willie, presented by Homefield Apparel. The podcast that I guess is coming off a basketball game. A game of basketball happened over the weekend. We're going to talk about it. I don't know if we have
basketball happened over the weekend.
Double extra basketball actually happened. We probably should have just had basketball and walked away in a much better mood, but alas, here we are.
Yeah, as all of our economics professors would have said, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and there's no such thing as free basketball. We paid dearly for these two periods of overtime.
We deeply paid the price. I mean, I guess we can start talking about Butler if we really want to, but I feel like there's just a bunch of feelings we got to get out. Butler was just bad. We played 35 minutes of winning basketball. 30. And then we decided, what if we didn't? And the result was a double overtime loss to a Butler team that we should have put away 4 times throughout the game. And here we are. Losers of 4 out of 5?
4 in a row.
4 in a row.
5 out of 6. 4 in a row, 5 out of 6.
With a top 10 team coming tomorrow.
Yeah. So things are looking up on the main line.
We got to get into all of this.
We definitely do.
Yeah, we got a lot to get into today and a lot to cover. You let in with Butler, and that's fair. To me, the most damning loss of the week was St. John's. As bad as the Butler finish was, and we have to address that, what have you. It was icing on the cake to what St. John's did to us. And in my view, what St. John's meant for the program in the season. Because in my view, that game and the way it played out and how listless we were throughout that game changed the tenor of the conversation around everything. The season. And as a result, around the coaching.
Yep.
Popped our bubble, I think. Well, actually, no, Butler popped our bubble, but St. John's put us there.
Right. We're now in most reasons, just talking tournament stuff. But this is bigger and broader than just the tournament this season. Mm-hmm. But yes, objectively, if you look at the bracketology that's been going out today that people are pushing out there, it's some people have us last 4 in, but most everybody has us bubble out at the moment, which is a crazy turn of events, given that just weeks ago we were on the 6th line and we fell right out of it.
Yeah, and we still have it's crazy considering obviously the losses are terrible that we have, but the wins we have to date can still go up against anybody's wins in college basketball. They are strong wins. Texas Tech is way better than they were earlier. And yet here we are. The one I saw most consistently is first 4 out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On average, too, I would agree. And this gets into okay, are we headed in the right direction?
No.
In any way, shape, or form. Yeah. And whether you want to talk about this season or the program overall, are we headed in the right direction? And the answer is obviously no. Are we heading even into a stable direction? And the answer is still no. It's not up. It's not right. It's not correct. And it's been really bad. And candidly, if you look at the Big East, if you look at our Big East season, you can say, we have 4 wins. Well, okay, we beat Creighton on the road, which is great. That's a good win. Yep. We beat Xavier by 1, a team that just lost by 43 at UConn. And then we beat DePaul twice, who just fired their head coach. So our Big East regular season accomplishments here are very little it's not none, but it's very little.
I mean, I've been on record all year. Creighton's not good, so I don't even really, I don't love that win either. Like, it's going to look good on a resume. Creighton is fatty, like not real value. Like I'm not calling them fat, but
Right. Okay. All right. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
In fact, Cockbrenner, you should bulk up.
Yeah. Weight room.
So when you look at what this season's meant, like, yeah, you come into the season and you're like, okay, I'll call it excuse. And we made the excuse too. So like we're like just and Trevor wasn't on it, but I was on it. So like I'll just take it. Like the excuse for last year was that we didn't have an appropriate roster. There were injuries. There were problems up and down. It wasn't a complete team. It was unfair to judge that team. So what did we do? We went out and spent a fuck ton of money of NIL to go get 4 really impactful transfers and keep and maintain several important key roster pieces to return to quote unquote bridge the culture gap, if you will, and maintain continuity and show stability in the program so that Kyle Neptune can be given, in fairness, a fair shake with a talented and experienced roster to go and at the bare minimum make the NCAA tournament. That was it. That was the bare minimum expectations. And I can tell you from certain DMs and other things that I've gotten over the year, I won't release who, but the program itself fundamentally believed that they had a second weekend team entering this season. That is not, I'm not making that up. That was the word and whispers around the program. But that wasn't the expectation. That was just like that wasn't the expectation that you make a second weekend. It was hey, you have to make the tournament. A month and a half into the season, it was rocky, but it was a tournament team. And on top of that, we had but with that, you had some losses that you really scratched your head about. I'm just recapping kind of what we all went through. The Penn loss and the Drexel loss in particular were really bad.
Yep.
But you said, you know what, we can live with those when you win at Creighton, when you beat UNC, right? You pick off two to three of this 5-game stretch. And okay, we live with all of that. We move on. Early season, transfers getting buckled in, whatever. Now, all these games that we have lost of late go back and make liars out of us and everybody else for last season with the excuses, right? It belies all the things. This team has gotten progressively worse, and all the transfers and most of the players on the team are shooting and playing objectively worse than they have at any other time in their recent past of their career. I'll pause.
It's a pretty good summary.
So with that, then the question then becomes like, where do we go from here? Obviously, we have games. We're going to finish out the rest of the season. And like, I don't want to hear fucking people talk about, oh, you're not a real fan because you won't support this person or that person or whatever. I don't want to hear that shit. Get out of here with that. Everyone here is going to watch all the games. If you're listening to this podcast, you're going to watch all the rest of the games for the whole rest of the season. So like, I don't want to hear real fan, fake fan, whatever. What we got to talk about though is what's coming, what's next? Because if he isn't objectively in the Novosphere on the hot seat, Kyle Neptune is on the hot seat. This has to turn around, and if it doesn't turn around and turn around in a big way against a very difficult schedule for the rest of the season, we gotta move on.
Yep. I mean, we're at a crossroads, for lack of a better term. This is just the time period where it has to turn around, or there's going to be some really uncomfortable conversations that are, I mean, they're already being had. I'm sure they're already being had, but there's going to be more public conversations that need to be had there. I don't want to go out and call for his head right now. It's mid-season. We're not going to do the DePaul thing. But this,
you don't want to follow DePaul's example?
honestly, like, there's a lot of DePaul stuff going around Big East Twitter right now. Also, I'm okay.
I take it back, DePaul. I didn't mean it.
I'm not following their example, but yeah, it's just it.
The seat is hot.
Yeah, the seat is just
on
hot.
fire.
That's just what it is. Yeah, I have a lot of feelings.
But can we get some things out of the way?
Yeah,
Just for a little bit. Like, I don't want to hear the comparisons with Jay Wright's second year. Can we stop? Like we gotta address this
Hang
now.
Hang on.
Yeah, but Chris, well, see, like if Jay Wright's second year, he'd actually running 500. So it's a complete apples to apples situation that is identical to exactly what's going on now. So you have to be patient, or else.
thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate that. Brian in orange. Brian does look good in
Brian
orange.
looks pretty good in orange.
You do look good, Brian.
I don't know if Blue Demon DeGen will look as good in orange, but Brian looks good in orange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just go?
Go.
All right. So yesterday, I don't know if anyone saw it, but I was fired up yesterday. Wildcat Access, and like nothing against Wildcat Access. I've heard this across a lot of different accounts. Basically laid out the scenario of the what if the person was fired before they found their footing, and laid out a couple of scenarios that I've heard multiple people call out. So it's not just Wildcat Access, but it's what if MSU fired Izzo after 1997? What if Baylor fired Scott Drew after 2007? What if UVA fired Bennett after 2011? What if UConn fired Hurley after 2020? And what if we fired Jay after 2004? Can I
interject really quickly there? The Hurley after 2020 thing is so lazy.
So I'm coming there. So buckle up because I'm about to go. All right. So we can start with MSU and Izzo in 1997. Izzo had been an assistant coach for about 12 years to that point. It's honestly probably the most like Kyle situation, except for the fact MSU had come off of like 2 early tournament departures. Like they were like, I think like a 6 seed and an 8 seed. They lost in the first and second round. It wasn't the same thing. It just, but like, hey, Izzo was an assistant who was given a job without being a head coach. Sure. Then we have Baylor firing Scott, or what if not firing Scott Drew after 2007? This one is the wildest one to me because 4 years earlier, when Scott Drew came, Baylor quite literally had a murder of a basketball player happen to the team.
There were several people in orange.
Yes, literally a person was murdered, and Scott Drew came and took the job. There was no expectations around the Baylor program. Even before this happened, it was 20 years of irrelevance. So there was not a single expectation of also a Scott Drew, who the year earlier led Valpo to a 20-win season. That was some success. We have UVA not firing Bennett after 2011. Tony Bennett had already been to the tournament twice at Washington State. He had coached Klay Thompson. He had coached NBA talent. He had done this before. And also UVA was coming off Dave Ladow completely butchering the program for like 6 years. So once again, not the same.
It all comes back to DePaul.
It all comes back to DePaul. UConn not firing Hurley after 2020. Very like, I don't even know how to describe this because Hurley's not the coach we should be talking about. And I'm going to get to this later. It's Ollie. So after Ollie essentially like tanked UConn's program for a little bit, and the AAC had its level to do with that, them not being the Big East, Hurley came back in and outside of year 2 immediately had the ship righted. Like they weren't a tournament team, but they were in, like you could tell that they were better year 2 of the AAC, and then they came to the Big East and then they were rolling.
Also,
and now
they didn't have the roster expectations Hurley's first and second year.
They did not have the roster expectations, but he got the ship on the right.
And
in
he's
the right
a proven
way.
program builder.
Yeah. And then we go to Jay Wright. Once again, this is not 2004. And I'm going to get to that eventually. Jay Wright, we didn't fire him after 2004. The expectations around the program were different. Let's call a spade a spade. I understand that this is the same program, but the expectations were different. We had just come off of multiple years of Lapis either taking us to the NIT or losing early in the first or second round. This was not a team that had Big East regular season champion expectations, Big East tournament expectations, second round of this tournament expectations. That's not what it was. Jay also had shown more success at Hofstra than Neptune had. And all of these people, and I can't even say all of them, I don't actually know, but we know Jay was on the hot seat from the fans, and he had more backing. He had more in his corner to say that he should have. He had more in his corner. He had the resume. He didn't have the expectations. He had all this stuff. Now, let's take a step back, and I want to give some grace for Kyle here. Kyle came into a situation with a lot of shit expectations. Like, that's just like Kyle.
Over the top. Yes, over the top. 100%.
He should not have done this. But this scenario that we're in isn't the Izzo conversation. It isn't Drew. It isn't Bennett. It isn't Hurley. It isn't Jay. It's Ollie. It's, okay, after Calhoun left, Ollie took an underachieving UConn team throughout the regular season, or maybe achieving as they should have been, whatever, that got hot with Shabazz Napier and won a title. But that was a Calhoun team. And Ollie got 5 years after that before UConn was kind of like, it's done. Ollie had the grace of winning a title and still only had 5 years. And if you ask any UConn fan, they would say we should have gotten rid of Ollie 2 to 3 years earlier. So the question to the Nova Nation is this move that we're doing, is it Ollie or is it Izzo? If you really believe that Kyle can become Tom Izzo, then okay, we'll go down that path and we'll take that. But realistically, those are the two paths you're looking at. Is it this is just a young assistant who's earning his stripes and going forward, or are we walking into a Kevin Ollie situation? That's one thing. Then there's the section of fans, and I'm trying to wrap this up as quickly as possible.
Keep going.
I'm going. Then there's the section of fans that feel like, and to credit, feel like Villanova does not do this. Villanova doesn't shake the boat. Villanova, this is against how Villanova acts. They will never do this, and are kind of smug about, what are you asking for? Who should come? Who should we hire? Whatever it may be, Villanova doesn't do this. You're right. Villanova doesn't do this historically, but this is a different time. It is 2024. It's not 2003, 2004. It's not 1978, 79 when we hired Rolly, whenever year that was. Villanova doesn't do things that way. I completely understand that. For everybody who's listening here, everyone on this pod, someone in your life or you went to Villanova, you understand the kind of community, the family feel, like you understand what it means to be a Villanovan. Everyone here I think knows that. If you love this program, you understand that. Villanova has given me so much as just as a person, like being very real here. Everything that's like beautiful and good in my life, I can look back and check at Villanova, like Villanova University. Everything about the person I am that I'm happy about came from has come and was grown at Villanova. I love that school and I love this program with all my heart and soul. But you cannot love something and not want it to grow. And that's what this is. There are people who think this program is perfect as it is, and this is a program that needs to grow. You cannot allow it not to grow. And that's where I think people need to look in the mirror, and Villanova as a university needs to recognize this moment for what it is. If we are 10 toes down behind Izzo, I would like to hear Mark Jackson say that, or behind Neptune. Yeah, if we're 10 toes
next Izzo?
Yeah, if we're 10 toes down and we think Neptune is the next guy and we are committing to him, I would love to hear that and back what you believe. But if we think this is an Ollie situation, I think Villanova needs to recognize this moment for what it is and rise to that occasion. That's all I want to say.
I'm just going to bounce off of that a little bit because Willie, I appreciate that. I really liked the moment that you had there about Villanova, brought a tear to my eye. But it's true. And I agree with the point. Villanova has always, we made this point, Villanova's always shown patience. But Villanova always hasn't spent $3 million on a roster. Villanova, for all of the time that we've spent in the Big East, when the Big East has been really good, I don't know if there's a collection of coaches. I'm probably overstating it, but when you figure in the double round robin, this collection of coaches in the conference is really good. Like, you can get eaten alive in this conference right now without a really top quality head coach. I mean, just go down the names: Pitino, Hurley, right? And then you go down even to the Millers and the McDermotts of the world. I'll even throw Ed Cooley, who's been to a Sweet 16. The amount of coaches that have made second weekends in this conference is crazy, and you have to play all of them.
We have 3 Final Four coaches, 2 national champion coaches.
Yeah,
like it's
and you have
scary.
to. Yeah, and it's scary. It's scary business, right? Like, and you have to play these teams at least twice a year. Like, these guys have a book on everybody. Everyone's got a book on everybody else. So the problem is that Shaheen Holloway, who took over from Willard, who took over an objectively worse situation, seems to have Seton Hall kind of beating expectations in year 2. Yeah, we beat them twice last year, but like pretty much beating expectations in year 2. I think actually Shaheen Holloway is a decent comparison. Shaheen Holloway is going to have a longer runway at Seton Hall than Kyle should have at Villanova.
And he has fewer resources that he's working with, if you're to trust what you've been hearing about Seton Hall's NIL situation.
Yeah.
And just historically Villanova versus Seton Hall in terms of recruiting and resources and facilities and
tradition.
Yeah.
Fewer NIL resources, but Shaheen Holloway gets a bit of runway because guess what? He took St. Peter's and beat like Kentucky and Purdue and everybody else in that NCAA tournament, made Elite 8. So guess what? You get runway when you've proven yourself. And this is the problem. Is like you said, Willie, you want to give grace to Kyle Neptune. I think that we all need to give grace. And the grace that we need to give is basically saying, should we have done this to begin with? Was it fair? Because if we can this guy's career is like
my comment on that is I don't know if it would have been fair to any new head coach, but the fact that you look back at it and again it's stuff that I've been seeing, like he had a 500 season at Fordham, which was an improvement from where he was. He basically had to rebuild a roster in an off season before it was NIL time. And that was the best season Fordham had in a really long time, and teams playing well since, or at least they were last year. I don't know if anybody was going to walk into the Final Four team that lost 2 all-time program guys, the best leader in the last 20 years, according to Jay Wright. Just guys that dragged that team to success. And be able to replicate any semblance of, you can look at the injuries and the bad luck that we had. You put any other coach in there, like it might not be all that different. But I agree. Like, this is not good for a first-time head coach.
It's just a really difficult situation in this conference, in this league, because what happened is, look, the schedule that Jay had to play until the very end was, UConn wasn't a national championship, and not even we played them, but they weren't even in the conference, right? Like you didn't have Miller at Xavier. You certainly didn't have Pitino at St. John's. You had Mullen, who couldn't coach his way out of a paper bag. You had Ewing for a good chunk of that time. And look, so like everyone in the Big East has like leveled up because we leveled up the conference after the breakdown, and everyone said, fuck, I got to keep pace with Villanova. And then Villanova didn't decide to keep pace with Villanova.
They did in some regards. I will say, like, we ponied up the NIL money. We gave the resources there. It was just,
but
we botched it.
That's not the program. Like, I know, like, to an extent, like that there's a level of like, yes, like Ashley and Randy did a good job of getting NIL money, but like they 100%. Technically weren't the program last year. Like they weren't the part of the program. This is the fans recognizing the moment and recognizing, like, there's a level of, like, I guess the question is, like, who do we think we are? Who does Villanova want to be? Because, like, historically, once again, this is a program that has been a winner that went to the Final Four in 70 and 80 and the 2000s, twice in the 2010s, and once in the 20s. Like, they have been, and sorry, in 1939 as well. Once we were in the first round,
we won a game.
We were in the first Final Four. Yes, we won a game, but no one needs to know that. So we've done this before. We have been historically, consistently a brand in college basketball. Like, yeah, we haven't been like I mean, I guess UNC is probably the strongest, or Kentucky's the strongest because they have the most history and most modern. We haven't been that, but like we are just a rung below that. We need to act like that. And act like that. I'm not saying, once again, I am not saying we need to go out and can Kyle and do whatever. But it's just like recognize, like, what do we think this program is? If we think this program to like take mid-major madness thing, it's Villanova a mid-major program when they were talking about the Big East like in the early 2015s, like, or in the middle of that run, because it was just us and then a bunch of other teams kind of trying to keep pace with us. Like, if that's what we are, let everyone know so that the NIL dollars can go down, because we're not throwing those NIL dollars. The fans have recognized times have changed and have recognized if we're going to roster build, you might need to have a strong NIL base to just not even to build a whole team off of NIL. Like, I don't think anybody at Villanova wants that. I don't want that. I think, like, to give Kyle credit, I like our recruits coming in from what I can like recruits right now. Like, I like them coming in. NIL should be used to fill in those gaps. But if we're recognizing that, okay, we have NIL to fill in gaps for players, I think we should also recognize we have money, we have the ability, we have the name to fill in gaps in coaching if we really believe that there's a gap in coaching. And that's what I'm worried about, is like, I don't know, do we believe that? Because just throw away the rest of the last 18 months, the last month has told you that there's a gap in coaching. Just like, that's just what it is.
It's just is what it is. And look, nothing to say bad about the guy, honestly. Honestly, he's been an awesome representative for the school for the entire period of his assistantship. He came in, he walked into an impossible situation with, to the point, impossible expectations when he took it over.
Yeah.
Like, what should the expectations for Villanova be? Because you said that, Willie. Like, what should they be? I have my belief on this. I think Villanova is the type of program that should consistently knock on the door of a second weekend.
Yeah.
Right? Like
I either want to see a Sweet 16 or I want to be upset that we lost in the first or second round. Like, right. That's what it should. We should either be getting upset and being like, fuck, why did we just lose to Valpo as a 4-13 game? Or we should be in the Sweet 16. Or like, all right, maybe it's a down year and it's like, all right, cool, we lost in the 6th seed. Like, that happens. Like, I'm not expecting like consistent, but like something in those realms should be the expectation for this program. And if we are not consistent,
minimum expectation.
If we are not doing that, if we're not just a blanket cover, if we're not a top 6 level seed most years, we are missing expectations. And once again, I'm not saying we have to be top 6 every year. Maybe there's one year that's 8, maybe there's one year it's 4, and you even out. Like, whatever it looks like, that's the expectations. That's what it should be. And we are not rowing in that direction right now.
No. Period.
I think even the most positive of people, we say we're just not rowing in that direction. And I don't know what people have seen empirically from this team right now, from this program over the last 20-ish months, that says, oh no, but we're not there, but we're rowing there. Atlantis was a strong start. And then we literally immediately shit the bed. That's all I have.
All right. We want to pause?
Yeah, with that, we'll transition to a quick ad break. Talk to
What's up,
you guys.
What's up, everybody? We are fast approaching March Madness, and I want to make sure that you, your friends, and your family are all ready for that. So how do we do that? Well, we go to homefieldapparel.com, and utilizing the promo code Nova Insider, you're going to be able to go buy hoodies, t-shirts, shorts, all with the newest logos and the old retro logos that you love for all your favorite schools. It can be Villanova, or it could be St. John's. It could be Seton Hall. It could be Clemson. Wherever you go to school, wherever your loved ones go to school, go to homefieldapparel.com. Utilize promo code Nova Insider for 15% off your first purchase. Trust me, you're not going to regret it.
We're back. We are so back.
Lost my train of thought there. Do we want to keep going on this, or do we talk about how tomorrow might be ugly too?
We can leave tomorrow for another podcast. I don't know.
We'll probably space tomorrow. I know people have been clamoring for spaces. We'll probably space. Me, Trevor, Brian will all be in attendance at the Finn. We're going to pack the Finn tomorrow. We're going to listen to Ryan Hartnett, and we're going to scream at the top of our lungs, and we're going to cheer on the team. But then we'll do spaces on the way back.
I'll cheer on the team.
Or we might scream at the top of our lungs again.
We're going to scream at the top of our lungs. It might sound different than you might want it to sound, but we're going to scream.
So is there any part of this where we also kind of like, again, I don't like singling guys out or anything like that, but like what point do you kind of look and say, like, you know, this isn't really Villanova basketball that we're watching? Like, I know part of that is the coaching, but I think we're at that point too, where it's like these guys just fundamentally aren't doing what we need.
Maybe start with not to like do a shit sandwich here, but like, do we start with a couple guys who have exemplified what we expect? And then so you could juxtapose.
And don't get me wrong here, like everybody has had their moments this year. But I would say just mainly sometimes there just seems to be like a lack of accountability, which you could point it as a coaching and staff issue. But the best things about our championship teams, our Final Four teams, is we had guys like Ryan Arcidiacono, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart. You know, we had these guys, Colin, who was, you know, the glowing example of this, who played with some of the guys that are on the current roster, about like making sure that everybody's locked in and ready to go. And you don't really see that as much.
Yeah. So the guys who I look to as leaders on this team, like obviously Eric Dixon has been, I mean, like we might have 5 wins without Eric Dixon. Like, like legit, he has been that impactful to us. And he's been that impactful to the program the entire time he's here, and his parents and family as well. Like when Dixon has a bad game, it's a shock. It's a legitimate shock when he has a bad game.
2 bad games to begin the year for us. We were kind of like, all right, you got to figure this out, Eric. And he did. He lit up UNC. He's been fantastic ever since.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. I just want to call out, he hasn't always been great from a scoring standpoint, but TJ Bamba plays Villanova basketball, like straight up. Like the guy is, it's kind of weird because like he just transferred in this year, and like it's almost like a weird like I don't even like when some people say, oh well, you got to take time to gel the transfers. TJ Bamba played Villanova basketball from like the first moment the ball was tipped in the first game.
He feels like he's been here the whole time, kind of thing. Like one of those transfers that like Eric Pascal or Caleb Daniels, like just, and Dylan Ennis too, that they came in and it was like, oh, this guy could have played here his entire career and we wouldn't have noticed. We would have noticed when Dylan was 28 and suiting up, but TJ's been awesome. You see moments in a lot of the guys, like, you know, Mark had a 3-game stretch this year that he was improving every game and really looked like he was taking control of his role and responsibilities. And then there's the St. John's game and a couple other instances where it's just like, and part of that is some of, I think, his use and his rotation and the playing time. But you do see a lot of moments from a lot of guys, but I would say Eric and TJ have been most consistent.
Yeah. I think Hart earned his starting role.
And he earned it a while ago, let's be honest.
Yeah, that was right. And I actually agreed with it. The funny thing is I happen to agree with what Kyle did there. Like inserting Hart into the starting lineup and then using Armstrong as a microwave off the bench was like, talk about like Villanova basketball coaching decisions. That was actually like
that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like what we've always done. Bring a point guard off the bench that can heat it up.
And to be fair, we jumped out to a 17-4 lead. Like whatever the score was, 11. We started 11. Like that was it worked.
Yeah.
We just didn't finish. Which, like, I think gets to, like, some of the players and some of the stuff that we just, like, haven't seen. I don't know. Like, I love him for everything he's done for the program. Justin has been present.
He's clearly not 100%. He's clearly not 100%.
Yeah.
Or we clearly had jaded expectations of where he might be coming off of his injury.
I said present at best in the way that like he hasn't. I don't think he's put his fingerprints truly across. I'm going back to my head. Any game this year, he's either been like fine, like I guess whatever. UConn was like probably his best.
He put his fingerprints on the back of UConn players, and that's why we lost the game. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Man.
You're right. There has not been like a vintage of the, Justin Moore takeover time. He shot the ball really well. Again, you can't count the ball.
Even was last year. There was the Xavier game where it was a Justin Moore game where it was
Yeah. So, and that's what I get. Like, he might not be 100%.
But I thought, I sorry to cut you off, but I thought it was very clear in overtime and double overtime that he just had no legs.
Which I wish he would have recognized. I wish he would have recognized that. No one would have dogged
himself or the coaches to just be, okay, if you're going to stay out, just facilitate. Get Eric the ball.
By facilitate, I mean give Eric Dixon the fucking basketball.
Yeah.
Eric deserves better. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot deserve better, but yeah, just like he hasn't impacted the way that we hoped, and maybe it's on us for just too much of expectations. But I don't think that's. I have a tough time buying that with everything that we've seen him do up until the Achilles injury, and it might just be the Achilles injury really just threw him off that much, and like. Hey, he's been a great Villanova basketball player. It's just this for the finish of his career is not the way you want to see.
It's not representative
of where
he was and where he was going pre-injury.
And I think that's a thing maybe we've become like spoiled with, but like so many of them had finished their careers just like with a bang. Colin, like literally, I mean, Colin and Jermaine didn't get the title, which like, it sucks, but it almost makes more sense that they couldn't win a title. But like, it was Colin and Jermaine. Let's really give him credit. Like Jermaine showed up so big in the 2022 tournament. Like that was him recognizing the moment and being like, we're not losing this game. And like we got to the Final Four of that. Colin did that. We saw Scotty do it. We've seen Jalen do it. We've seen like
Dante
Cunningham. Yeah. People just finishing the moment, and maybe Justin's tired, maybe it is, but like for what it is, it's just like it hasn't, and it's not even that he's played terribly. It's just that we're sitting there, we're like, there's more here. Like, no pun intended. But there's more here. We know it because we've seen it, and it's just like, is this just gone for good and like it's not whatever, or is there a lack of, we'll say, focus?
He is coming off the knee sprain, which, we know nothing about our team's injuries, which...
That's another point.
Again, don't get Chris started.
Frustration. I mean, the Nana Njoku thing.
It was your season, man. I was hoping for it. But also, side note, we're mentioning Colin and Jermaine. Shout out to them. They're going to be at the All-Star weekend for the G League Showcase. Colin's almost averaging a triple-double in the G League.
That's for you, Brian. That's for you, Brian.
If we're gonna do combos, I mean, Dante and Jalen just had a great game. Literally, like, the Knicks started 3 Villanova players and won by 20. So,
Josh almost had a triple-double that game.
Stop looking away over there. I want to focus on this.
I know. Well, look, you got to bring some levity back to the situation. Like,
no.
When we've been playing like this, the great thing about Villanova basketball is you can go and watch, all your favorite players and play in the NBA, which is fun. But yeah, it's I don't know.
I mean, we have a request, and it's actually the next person I wanted to talk about. Nova Alerts asks, can we get our thoughts on Lance Ware?
So for what he's allegedly being paid via NIL, like, yes, underperforming. Again, I don't know what we were all excited when he signed with this team. Don't get us wrong. Providence was rumored to get him, and we kind of swooped in at the 11th hour. And I think for the most part, everybody was like, that's how you do NIL. Brian.
Were we all excited?
Brian would like me to tell everybody that he was right.
You know what? Here's the
You
thing.
didn't say that. You said we're all excited. I wasn't.
First of all, let's talk about one thing though with the Lance Ware thing, because everyone, like, you looked at his numbers at Kentucky and it wasn't like, oh wow, this guy is.
But Coach Calipari was like, that's one of the best leaders I've ever had, and that might say more about Kentucky leadership. Well, he could be a great. Don't get me wrong. Like there's been nothing to indicate that he isn't a great leader. You know, it's just on the court has not been matching what I think we were expecting, and but you only heard good things about him coming in, but there just never were the numbers to back it up. It's just been really tough having him as the only backup option after Njoku went down.
So my thing with this is, like, with Lance, it's not even like the numbers. Like Lance could put up 0, 0, and 0.
You don't need to put up offensive numbers.
But it's just like you can tell immediately when he gets in, they're going to the rim, there's a bucket, there's a run. That just correlation or causation, I'll sit on my hands. But like when he comes in, runs tend to happen. And that's just like not what we've ever expected from from our backup big. Like, you expect him to play with energy, to play with force. Like, yeah, they might not score a basket. And Lance plays with energy. I'll give him that. I don't know if
mispurpose sometimes.
Mispurpose energy,
I was just gonna say he plays hard. He just plays like an 11-year-old.
He plays with the zoomies.
He's just all over. He's everywhere and nowhere.
When Hakeem Hart had the Butler center isolated under the basket and Lance wasn't in the game, I was expecting him to run off the bench and shove Hakeem out of the way. And just my favorite moment of the season.
Like, we've just seen backup bigs like play with energy. Like, I mean, Daryl Reynolds,
Dada
was Dada. Like, they were such great backup bigs. Like, and they played with energy. They rebounded. Like
Eric when he was young.
Yeah, even they probably Lance is more mobile than all of them.
Yep.
They all switched and like did better, like switching than like he did. Like Dada was the MVP of the Advocare International Tournament. Like, people forget he like destroyed Florida State, and like so there's just like this level of like it's just like it's less about the stats with him. It's just like the impact, and like we've just seen there. A myriad of bench centers across the nation, just even in the Big East, that we've seen play with like force and play with energy and play in a way that's like, okay, the ship isn't sinking the second they come in.
Nova Alerts is on us to talk about.
Yeah, I know.
To echo the only thing we ever hear from the team, like we're focused on defense and rebounding. So if he did nothing else, you want him to defend and rebound, and he just is not capable of doing. Granted, the Big East has some of the best centers in the country.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, we haven't played. I guess Klingon was kind of a factor. He was coming off an injury. Yeah. I didn't think he killed us, though Lance Ware did. But the Big East has a really tough rotation of centers. Like, there's 5 or 6 of them that may have an argument for being all Big East. And it's just, it's tough to just leak points like that the second ours sits down.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to count who they are in your head.
No, I'm just trying to see. I'm like off the top of my head. Does any conference have just like better centers from top to bottom?
No.
From top to bottom, like obviously, like Dickinson's at Kansas State or Kansas, Edie's at Purdue, but top to bottom,
Kansas is having a bad year with him.
At least like the top 6 centers in this like league are legitimately really like great centers.
I got news for you. I mean, look, everyone watched that Providence Georgetown game the other day. I thought Supreme Cook and Oduro were awesome.
We are going to get out rebounded by 50 when we play Georgetown.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, 100. I've already, in my head, decided that we're losing at least once to Georgetown this year. It's already rattling around there. Like, if Georgetown plays, the emotion around the game is not going to be nearly what it was. But if Georgetown plays like they did versus Providence, they're going to beat us in D.C. with how we've been coming out in games.
Like, I might go to that game.
Epps is a bucket. And Cook is Cook's gonna cook Lance Ware. Like, I mean, call a spade a spade, right? Like,
Call a
like,
chef a chef.
But and Cooley is gonna out scheme the game like that much more. I mean, he had a deficit of talent on the floor versus Providence, and I thought he schemed that game as good as he could, given all the things that were around the program. In that whole situation, I thought he coached his ass off the other day. So, like, not that I want to give a lot of credit to him, but like, yeah, I mean,
he coached a great game with worrying about, potential defamation lawsuit.
Gonna look good in orange, buddy.
So look, I mean, when you, I guess I'm trying to circle it back to everything. Mm-hmm. When you see a whole team that's like, where you're like, yeah, you could point out a couple players who've been really good consistently. And you could point out, but you point out a lot of players, and you keep saying the word flashes. Flashes is something that you expect from a freshman or maybe a young sophomore, right?
Yeah,
like,
Chris, are we an old team?
Yeah, like maybe one of the oldest in D1, right? And with carryover leadership from the quote unquote Jay Wright era, right? Like carryover leadership. So like when you get through all of that, what changed? And it's not it, and so I want to put a bow on the whole thing is like, hey, I said this Monday before, and we've had our discussions before about this, but like when the whole team shoots worse than it was before, it's the coaching. And like it's like really annoying to say that because it's like people are like, well, the coach doesn't shoot the basketball. I get that. But we're not putting anyone in good positions. We're not making anyone more successful. We're not giving people confidence. Like and we're not and like you go to the timeouts in the huddle. You go like the in the huddle thing.
Go.
Bring up the Mata thing.
Yeah. Thad Mata in the huddle segment in the Butler game the other day was like, he looked at the game with 12 minutes left. We're up pretty solidly at that point and said, guys, we're gonna win this game. Like you just keep that positive thought in your head, right? Like gassing his players up to one extent, but to the other extent, he's looking at the game and he's an experienced coach and saying like, we're just not hitting shots. Like the action is gonna eventually swing our way. And boy, did it swing their way. But he just looked at it and said, we're outplaying them. We're straight up outplaying these guys right now. Like keep the positive thoughts in your head and we're going to win this game. And he was fucking dead right. Like, and you go to every single time that Neptune's in the huddle with these guys. We could be on like a 12-0 run against us, which has happened many a times this season. And of course it wouldn't call timeout at 7-0. It would be called at 12-0, but like 12-0 run against us. And he's sitting there and he's like, guys, you got to get back. And I'm like, can we scheme an offensive set?
There was a period of time in the Butler game that we had made 4 of our last 5 shots, and Butler was on a 14-5 run. That was
I don't even know how that
Tommy
happened.
Scoop stat.
It doesn't make sense. How do you make 4 shots?
That math is not mathing. Yeah,
that math didn't work right.
No, that was Tommy's stat. So you can't come at me. I will show you the receipt. But that was the stat.
But I mean, like it just comes back to it. To me, it comes back to like, hey, like the fish stinks from the head. Like at some point, it is the buck stops at somebody, and the buck stops at Kyle Neptune.
Yeah.
And so like, look, we got a game. We got like, I mean, every game. A lot of games are must wins right now. We got Marquette and Providence. And
if we can rattle off 4 straight, we can afford to lose one. But like as of right now, like the next 4, we have to win 4 in a row before we're like, all right, maybe we can lose a game. And I don't feel confident in that. I don't really feel confident in that. Nothing about the way the team has played since Creighton, nothing about the way the DePaul
since Christmas. How about that?
30 minutes
since Christmas,
of the UConn game.
Yeah, and like once again, like
which 30 minutes?
Yeah, I was bullish in the UConn game. One, mainly because I kind of thought we needed that win, and I thought we would step up to the moment. And we like sort of. I'm not even. We stepped up to the moment. UConn's just that good. Like whatever. But it's less of the UConn game, and it just gets to like St. John's was bad.
St. John's games and the Marquette game.
Yeah.
Can I quickly explain the 14-5 thing? It was because our previous 5 shots, or our previous 4 shots that we had made, were so far apart that was like, it works out. Like, it just depends on when you start the clock. But our 4 makes were so long ago that we had only scored 5 points in the time that Butler scored 14 is the explanation.
Got it. Okay.
I was going to tweet it, but it's more complicated. It's easier to just say it out loud. Anyway, St. John's was depressing.
It was. I mean, that was one of the more embarrassing losses that we have had. Like, I don't even like Marquette. I think Marquette's just good. They schemed us. They back cut us to hell. They showed the softness. But we played like I just said this in the chat, and I kind of want to like Marquette. We played soft, like just defensively. We had like soft coverage, and they were cutting us up and all that stuff. During St. John's, we were soft. Like, we just got bullied. It was a game it was like, it was fine. It was close. And then St. John's came out in the second half and was like, fuck this, punched us in the face. And we said, I don't think we'll
swing me again.
Yeah. And we just like took it. And that was a game where we called it out on the spaces with the St. John's guys of like, this is a game once again that both teams need to win. And one team played like they needed to win, and the other team kind of was like, this is a walkthrough. And I just want to see us play like it fucking matters to you.
Yeah.
That's just what it is.
Like that game against St. John, I led off with this, but that game against St. John's changed the whole conversation for me.
Yep.
Right. Like, it changed the whole conversation for me because that was jarring as a Villanova. Even last year's team fucking competed their face off every game. Like, were they worse? They were just straight up worse than some teams, but there was pride. There was no pride in that St. John's game. It was a disgrace. Like, straight up. It was a disgrace. Yeah, it wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a bomb. Joseph was right. but it was truly terrible. And it was bad at the Pavilion, but at MSG under the brightest lights and the biggest stage, just a total embarrassment of the program.
I think
everything that we've done to build it.
I think
I didn't do shit. But you get my point.
I think I said this in the beginning of the year, and if not, I'm going to repeat it now. Like, the way I've typically watched, like, I watch basketball, like college basketball, is you get an idea of who the team is in a non-conference. That's like, you get an understanding of what this team is. And what we saw was an inconsistent team, but a team that could be a 1 seed. Because UNC is well on its way to becoming a 1 seed, or at least a 2 seed. Like, we saw that level. We saw a team that could do that. That's where I've been all season of, like, we're probably like the biggest 8 seed in the world. Like, we're inconsistent, but we have a high, like, ceiling, low floor. We could do whatever. What I've always believed is the early January stretch, like January through February of your conference team, you get an understanding of who your team is in the beginning of the year. This is where your team is like, what are we going to be? Like, this is that chance where that your team puts into stone, like, this is where the season is made. I don't think the season's made at the end of February. The season is made right here in the thick of things, in the first tranche that we're here right then. This is where the season is made, and we're squandering it. And like, maybe we'll be able to come back, and we'll bounce back, and we'll start playing like the team we saw in Atlantis, and we'll rip off 7 out of 10, and we'll end up back like on the right side of the bubble and all that stuff. Maybe that shows itself, but I think this team is showing who they are and the guts that they have right now, and it's not much. And it's disappointing because this team should be so much better. There is no reason for the team to be playing to this level. There's just not. And there's just no reason the team should be playing this level. To your point, Chris, if every single person on the team, maybe sans Eric Dixon, is playing worse than they did last year, you got to look somewhere else. You got to look to the head of the ship. Like,
and you're just putting up listless performances, poorly coached performances where, like, Marquette's going to go up tempo. You know that you're at home. Like, you know that they're at home. You got to turn that into a rock fight. All that stuff's going to happen, right? Like, culture of the program stuff, right? Like this team can't jump stop bounce pass out of a to save its life. And so when you talk about, oh well, Kyle is this continuity hire and we want to keep the culture going, whatever. What culture? It's not showing in the court.
The reason you hired Kyle is gone. Like
Right.
the culture is just, and like the culture wasn't like, I think there's a level of like, was the culture, I think I said this on a podcast, was the culture winning or was there something else in the culture? Both, and both are gone. Like, we're not playing that way. We are jump stopping and like we pivot, but like not with the purpose. We're doing it because it's been drilled into us. And then we get there, and if the immediate read isn't open, no player knows what they're doing in that situation. So it's just like we are. I don't know. Chris, you said it great. Like, if Kyle's a continuity hire, the continuity is kind of fucked up right now. Like, hey, everything else aside, we thought we'd keep the continuity. Like, and once again, I'm not in the locker room. I am sure every single one of those guys fucking loves their teammates. I'm sure, like, from that vibe, there's no issues at all. We haven't heard anything to that array. I think they're all fucking great players, great human beings, going to go do great things on a basketball court or wherever they want to go do in their life. But they're not doing great things on the basketball court in 2024 as a unit.
No. So this week, I mean, like we didn't even prep Marquette. I mean, we played them already, and like Providence. I mean, you got Odoro, you got an upstart program there that's kind of unfortunately floundering because of losing Bryce Hopkins. But candidly, I'm not even like all that interested in the previews. Like, to me, like if this team's going to go down, at least fucking go down swinging. Like, and that's like the biggest point that I want to make. Like, show me. This is show me time now. Like not show me in the terms of like, are you going to make turn? Go down swinging. Play your fucking ass off and go down swinging, because like if you don't, like, I mean, look, I don't make the decisions around here, but like Mark Jackson does, and by the way, he's got a fucking decision to make, right? Like at the end of all of this.
Yep.
Like, right, like, and he might have to make a different decision than he has made in every other hiring decision except one, and that's hire someone outside of the Villanova family. But like at the end of all of this, but if you're playing for your teammates, those who came before us, each other, hard, smart, together, like go do all those things now and do it like everyone's life depends on it for a month and a half, because it's going to take that and then some to turn this ship back around and get this and land the plane somehow with the season.
I'm not even out there. This team is better than they've been playing. So I'm not even at the like show heart and stuff, because I'm just like, you are better than this. We are better than this. I'm not saying this team is I'm not sitting here saying, oh, this team is a 4 seed. Like I'm not going that far, but this team is better than that. Fucking show up. Show up for, I won't even give you 40 minutes. Show up for 37 minutes. If we lose because of a
35 wasn't good enough. Yeah. We need at least 36, 37.
Show up for 37 minutes. And if we can do that and win games, I will, like, at the end of the day, winning cures everything. And we're not winning. And, like, I think there's a level of, like, were we spoiled? Yes, we were spoiled for the expectation.
Spoiled.
Expectation for Final Fours and all that stuff. The expectation of being 19-12, 20-11, 21-10, and being a solid tournament team, that's not being spoiled. If Villanova's not that, if that's not what Villanova's like ultimate goal is, then I don't know what the fuck the last 60 years of Villanova basketball has been. It must have been a fucking aberration, because for the last 60 general years, we've been that, and we're not that right now.
I was just
as always, let's go
simmer for a little bit. No, I just wanted to let it simmer for a little bit because I wanted to transition into something a little more lighthearted to wrap up.
I need a goddamn cigarette.
It's time to talk about our our Wildcat of the week, our random Wildcat of the week, and for that we'll bring it back to someone who was a part of all that Willie was just so passionately describing. A 6'7" forward from Brooklyn, New York, Curtis Sumter.
Ooh,
Let's talk Curtis Sumter, who it's kind of a unique story with him, just because he unfortunately like ushered in what became like Villanova basketball. His injuries forced Jay, as everybody knows, like the small ball revolution, everything happened. And people pointed at Jay Wright as one of the pioneers, and that was due to necessity of Curtis Sumter, who was playing at an all Big East level. Just his knees kept blowing up, and Jay was forced to go with the 4-guard lineup. And the rest, as we know, is history. But let's talk a little bit about Curtis.
If I was on Twitter at that, Twitter existed, or it may even existed, but if I was on Twitter, I know I've been very like, there's a lot of players who've been like, this person is an NBA basketball player. Curtis Sumter was an NBA player, and that goddamn knee injury took away an NBA career from that man. He absolutely, I honestly think Curtis Sumter is like a perfect modern like wing. And like, he was honestly kind of ahead of his time as a player. Super effective. I don't even know like what the stats. He was all Big East, like all Big Five, everything you could be. All he was like 16 and 8, 15 and whatever.
15 and 7, all Big East, all Big Five. Just
an absolute like, could inside out, could shoot, could like put the ball on the floor, could post, like could do everything that you wanted. Tough as nails. The injury, the injury spurred modern Villanova basketball. So like, I'm not going to complain that much. Sorry, I just got a work text. I
know you're busy.
Yeah. I was like, wait, what the hell?
Talking about Curtis Sumter. Have some respect.
Yeah, just like he was absolutely great. And honestly, the thing that I think is cool is he went to Bishop Laughlin, which also produced Javon Pinkston. So like, same school kind of thing. Cool vibes.
Brian?
Something cool that I think I've tweeted about before about Curtis Sumter is, so that recruiting class was Jay's first. Baker, Dunleavy, Curtis, Frazier, Allen Ray, and Randy Foy. And each of those guys has gotten to serve as sort of the most important person in the program. Frazier was the only 5-star in that class, and he kind of was the one who kept them all together, or kind of got the other guys on board. First 2 years of playing, Sumter was the clear best player in the class. Obviously, the injuries Willie just talked about sort of give him a back seat. I think A-Ray probably stepped up after that and sort of became the best player in that class. Senior year, Randy Foy was a rocket ship, first-team All-American. He became the best player in the class. And the nod to Baker Dunleavy is apparently he's the one who convinced Jay to switch to trying his zone defense in 2016. And I think a lot of that has to do with why we were kind of able to get over some of those tournament humps. So it's kind of cool. Each of those guys has had a spotlight. And they've all clearly stayed friends, and they've all stayed around in some respect. So Curtis, to me, is kind of a seminal, not a Mount Rushmore program guy, but
no, because unfortunately, like one of the defining moments came after he was unable to play. Like right. He was the trigger for that avalanche.
Can I just bring up a point about Sumter that I think is often underrated? But alongside, everyone thinks about 06, 07. That was a really important year for the program because Jay needed
Jay was on the hot seat.
No, he wasn't in the hot seat. But after 04, 05, and 05, 06, right? Like the program needed to prove that it could hang, right? Like, okay, so you had that great recruiting class that panned out and made a Sweet 16 and Elite 8 run and were just everything for the program. Now they leave. And you're handing the keys to the point guard spot to a freshman. Like, okay, how do you tie this all together? Can you get this team, whatever? And there was rightfully not really high expectations for us that year. Yeah. Right? Like, I think we had built some expectations because, hey, we just did the Sweet 16 Elite 8 thing back-to-back years, so there was some expectations. But, like, I think Jay would have been excused for missing the tournament that year. Totally. And he had a good recruiting class boiling with the Fisher Stokes class going on, and Pena, I think, was the other member of that class. So, and Malcolm Grant was also there, I think. So he had that going, but like that class would have been excused for not making the tournament that year. But Nardi and Sumter
and Sumter,
yeah. held everything together and bridged that culture gap until the next set of guys were mature enough to lead, like the Cunninghams and Andersons of the world were mature enough to lead. And like, look, like Sumter unfortunately missed the Sweet 16 Elite 8 runs because of his injuries. But like when you talk about, Wheeler, you talked earlier on the podcast about leaving a mark in your final year in the program. Like that was it sounds crazy to say now, but like getting that team to like an 8-9 game in that year, beating Texas late in that year in the Wells Fargo Center, like that was on like Sumter, like obviously Scotty's scoring, but Sumter and Nardi's leadership. And that was like an important moment for the program to prove that, hey, we could stick.
Yeah. That was, I mean, not even just to take that to like for anyone who wasn't aware of that, like that, like this team, I didn't really think about this 2006, 2017, very similar-ish to the 2018, 2019 Booth and Pascal team, where it was like, that was a Booth and Pascal like rollout. Like Scotty's your Colin of like he was younger then, and it was kind of like, all right, this is a guy we can tell is about to be the guy, but like he's not ready yet. You go to your two veterans of Nardi and Sumter, or Eric and like Phil, and like they had that moment that they finished strong. Like, and once again, this is a team that lost in the 8-9 game, but they finished strong. They held the culture together. There was continuity, and they finished in a way, like, once again, I wish Sumter could have finished, like, I wish he could have finished I wish every Villanova basketball player finished with the title. That's what I hope for. Every title from now on, we win.
So Chris talking about the Texas game, that was Kevin Durant's freshman year, if anybody doesn't remember that. Yeah. And I remember looking at the guy next to me saying, doesn't Texas have a really good freshman? This was really late in the game. He was like, yeah, it's that guy 35 right there. And then a couple weeks after, he said, like, Villanova was his toughest game in college. Because in that particular game, he was not a non-factor, but a very, like, not important factor.
Curtis Sumter held a top 15 player in the NBA in basketball history. Yeah. And he put him in jail. Durant had a tough day. It was awesome.
And Dante Cunningham.
It was Cunningham and Sumter.
Yeah. Hope you look good in orange, KD. He did.
Oh, man. That Dante Cunningham dunk was like the original Shaq Fitman play of the week. So yeah, I love Curtis and everything. I have like a small little story about Curtis Sumter. It was my freshman year on campus, so the end of 2006. The basketball season was over, but everyone was still like flying high about the Final Four run. The Elite Eight run. And the guys were actually out playing basketball in between. There was a court. I don't know if it's still there. There was a court in between like St. Monica's and Stanford. And
it's there.
Yeah. And there was like Nardi and Sumter were on the side, but Dwayne Anderson, Bilal Ben, and that's a fucking blast from the past. Dwayne Anderson, Bilal Ben, and Dante were all playing basketball, and they were going like 3-on-8 versus like, a bunch of like 5'6" white kids, like, and destroying everybody, of course. I walked over because I'd come back from class or something like that, and like buddies had texted me saying like, "Oh, you got to come here. This is like unbelievable." And I walk over, and I walk up, and there's Curtis Sumter standing right there, and he like reaches out his hand and shakes my hand and goes, "Hi, I'm Curtis Sumter." And I would be like, "Yeah, no fucking shit, bro. Like, like, what do you want me to say? I'm Chris Bellotti? Like, what's the fucking response to that?" Like, because I'm like a 19-year-old kid, just like, "Yeah, I know who you are, man." But he was like super nice. Sorry, I have to do one other funny story about that.
This is what the segment's for. Go for it.
At one point in time in that game, I forget who tossed it to who. It might have been like Bilal Ben to Dwayne Anderson. Shane Clark might have been involved in this too. I forget. It might have been one of those guys. Tossed an alley-oop and just dunked it all, like posterized my buddy. And Dante Cunningham walked over, put his finger on my buddy's forehead and goes, he just put his beef in your face. It was fucking unbelievable.
Oh, man.
So, good. I'm glad we can end with a laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Great memories, great times. Curtis Sumter's currently, I think he's still working with the 76ers as a player development coach. He's been there for a while, survived a few coaching regimes. So must be good if they're keeping him around. I think Reggie Redding's over there with him too, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
All right. So we'll I think we're gonna do the spaces. I'm pretty committed. I'm pretty committed to a ride home spaces. I'll be having like an hour and a half in the car.
We're either gonna burn down some shit, or like we kind of already burned down some stuff. So we're either gonna keep burning stuff, or I don't know, laugh about us beating Marquette somehow.
I'm gonna try and get Blue Demon to Jen on the space tomorrow. Oh man! All right. With that, are we all set? Will, you want to take us home?
I don't remember how we do it. So we'll talk to you all in the spaces. We'll be back next week. And I guess, as Chris says, as always, let's go Nova.